Once two strangers climbed a rocky top looking for a moonshine.
In 1958, a 22-year-old country star arrived in London with a shocking companion that ended his career overnight. She was just 13 years old and happened to be his cousin. But child marriages were only the beginning of country music's most twisted scandals. One star set an award on fire during live television. Another compared a president to Hitler and lost millions. And from bigamy to racism, legends often hid behind their guitars while destroying lives. The industry covered it up for decades, but the truth always found a way out. At the height of his fame, Spade Cooley was known as a king of Western swing, filling thousand-seat ballrooms, rivaling Bob Wills in popularity, appearing in more than 50 Western films, and even owning his own star in Hollywood. By 1950, he was a millionaire planning a theme park called Water Wonderland. But on April 3, 1961, his paranoia and jealousy boiled over. Convinced his second wife, Ella May, was unfaithful, he forced his 14-year-old daughter, Melody, to watch as he brutally tortured and murdered her mother. The autopsy revealed more than 70 injuries, and Melody's courtroom testimony stunned the nation. Cooley was sentenced to life for murder by torture, though he maintained a bizarre image of respectability in prison by forming a band and being praised as a model inmate. After only 8 years, he was offered parole, but on November 23, 1969, just after performing for law enforcement officers, he collapsed backstage from a heart attack and died, his story going from applause to obituary in a single evening, leaving behind not fame, but horror. Then came Johnny Paycheck, whose downfall erupted on December 19, 1985, inside the North High Lounge in Hillsboro, Ohio. After leaving a wild Hells Angels party where he grabbed cocaine and cash, he stopped at the bar, wired and paranoid. When a local named Lloyd Wise offered him turtle soup, Paycheck snapped, pulled a .22 pistol, and fired, grazing Wise's scalp and knocking off his hat. "He blowed my hat off," Wise later told the court. The shooting made national headlines, with George Jones, Merle Haggard, and Jerry Lee Lewis rallying to Paycheck's side. But his story of self-defense collapsed, and in 1986 he was sentenced to 9.5 years in prison. Behind bars, he earned his diploma, worked as a teacher's aide, and received thousands of letters from fans. But his troubles continued, including a crushing $1.6 million IRS bill. Though Governor Richard Celeste commuted his sentence after 22 months, Paycheck never escaped the shadow of that night, even as his 1977 anthem Take This Job, and Shove It became a bitter reflection of his own life. And yet, for all the scandal, chaos, and violence, perhaps no country figure embodied turmoil more than David Allan Coe. David Allan Coe's career wasn't marked by the occasional slip-up. It felt like one scandal after another. While most singers in Nashville bent the rules, Coe seemed determined to rip them up entirely. His troubles began early. By the age of 9, he was being shuffled in and out of reform schools and prisons, where he built a reputation for violence and even took part in rough talent contests behind bars. As he grew older, rumors spread that he had killed another inmate and spent time on death row, claims official records never supported. But one Coe never tried to deny. Instead, he fueled the legend himself through his songs and even on his website, allowing myth to overshadow fact. When he was released from prison in 1967, he didn't march into Nashville's good graces, but instead parked a hearse outside the Ryman Auditorium, busking on the street and sleeping in the back. Eventually, he scored a record deal and even wrote hits for others, including the anthem Take This Job and Shove It. But at every tone, Coe seemed to sabotage his own career. In 1978 and again in 1982, he self-released 2 albums, Nothing Sacred and Underground album, that was so offensive no label would touch them. One track in particular, N***I**O, was filled with racist and homophobic slurs, and the New York Times, along with nearly every major outlet, labeled his work some of the most racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and obscene music ever recorded by a popular songwriter. Instead of apologizing, Coe leaned into controversy, selling the albums himself through biker magazines and concerts for $20 apiece. Years later, when pressed about the lyrics, he dismissed them as satire and pointed to the fact that his drummer, Kerry Brown, was black, but the damage was done. His reputation only darkened further in 2015 when he admitted he hadn't paid income taxes for at least 6 years, leaving him with nearly $1 million in IRS fines, restitution, and probation. To dodge seizure, he demanded only cash for his concerts, sometimes playing more than 100 shows a year while the IRS chased him. Taken together, Cole's life proved that no one in country music built a legend of chaos quite like him. The more shocking the story, the more he seemed to thrive on it. Yet even Cole's wild reputation couldn't match the scandal that erupted when Jerry Lee Lewis, already infamous for his wild piano playing, stunned the world in May 1958. Then just 22 years old, Lewis arrived in London for a 37-show tour with a young companion, Myra Gale Brown, introduced as his wife. The truth was worse than anyone imagined. Myra was only 13 years old, fresh out of 7th grade, and not only his third wife but also his second cousin. To make matters worse, Lewis hadn't even finalized his divorce from his previous wife. The revelation set off a frenzy in the British press, and angry crowds booed him until he was forced off stage. His tour collapsed after just 3 shows, costing him nearly $200,000, a devastating loss at the time. Radio stations banned his music, venues refused to book him, and newspapers branded him everything from a home wrecker to a criminal. Lewis tried to defend himself, claiming such marriages were common in Louisiana, but in the U.S. the backlash only intensified as fans learned he was guilty of both child marriage and bigamy. His record sale plummeted from millions to nearly nothing, and his once skyrocketing career seemed destroyed overnight. Worse still, Myra later revealed that during their 13 turbulent years together, she endured relentless physical and emotional abuse tied to Lewis's drinking and rage, though he eventually married 7 times, with 2 of his wives dying under suspicious circumstances. His name never escaped the taint of scandal. Myra would later describe him as a dangerous child in a man's body, a legacy of chaos that defined him for decades. And if Jerry Lee Lewis set the early standard for country scandal, Hank Williams Jr. proved that even in modern times, one remark could end a career. On October 3, 2011, appearing on Fox and Friends, he shocked the anchors when he compared President Obama golfing with House Speaker John Boehner to Hitler playing golf with Netanyahu, before doubling down and calling Obama and Biden the enemy. The fallout was immediate. Within a day, ESPN dropped his iconic Monday Night Football theme, ending a partnership that had lasted since 1989. Hank Williams Jr.'s career meltdown ended with the suddenness of a record scratch in a noisy bar, but Hank wasn't the type to apologize. While sponsors and networks scrambled, he doubled down, blasting ESPN on his website and claiming he had walked away by choice, accusing the network of stepping on the toes of the First Amendment. The clash spread quickly online, with furious fans defending him and critics calling him reckless. He even released a protest song, Keep the Change, aimed at Obama and the networks, which was downloaded more than 180,000 times in just 2 days. On The View, he insisted he had no regrets and even called Mickey Mouse mean. The following year at the Iowa State Fair, he pushed further, telling a massive crowd that America had a Muslim president who hated farming, hated the military, hated the country, and that the people hated him back. For Hank, scandal wasn't a side effect of his career. It was a fuel that kept it moving. His concerts became cultural flashpoints where Confederate flags waved proudly under his Bucephalus nickname. His set lists often included If the South Would Have Won and other songs steeped in threats and Southern pride. And in 2015, during one sweltering summer show, fans stood in rebel flag capes as he hurled homophobic insult from the stage, each word cheered louder than the last. Through every storm, Hank locked in on his core audience, smirking his way through every clash, never once hinting that he might stop. To his biggest fans, he was the outlaw king of country music. To his critics, the ringmaster of its loudest circus. Charlie Rich's scandal, by contrast, arrived in a single shocking moment at the Country Music Association Awards in 1975. Known as the Silver Fox, Rich had won Entertainer of the Year the previous year and returned to present the award. But he was unsteady, fueled by gin and tonics and still on painkillers for a broken foot. Unstage, he rambled through awkward jokes, flirted with Loretta Lynn, and wandered off script as the audience squirmed. Finally opening the envelope, he calmly pulled out a lighter and set the winner's card on fire, holding it up and declaring, "My friend, Mr. John Denver." The crowd gasped in disbelief as ashes floated down. Denver, watching by satellite from Los Angeles, had no idea his big win had come with a literal flame. To many, it looked like Rich was mocking Denver, whose polished, pop-friendly style often clashed with traditionalists. The backlash was swift. Rich was never invited back to the CMA Awards, his songs vanished from radio, and his sales plummeted. His son later insisted it was a joke gone wrong, but the damage was done. One of country's most innovative voices, who had blended jazz, blues, pop, and country, had instead lit a fire that consumed his own career. Porter Wagoner's scandal unfolded more slowly but with just as much bitterness. Known for his glittering rhinestone suits under the bright TV lights, Wagoner was even more famous backstage for his desire to control those around him. His biggest clash came with Dolly Parton, the young singer who joined his show in 1967. Their duets made them one of the most beloved acts in Nashville, but behind the smiles, tension simmered. By 1974, Dolly was ready to break free, and she wrote I Will Always Love You as a farewell to him, a tender song masking a painful split. 5 years later, in 1979, Wagoner sued her for $3 million, claiming she had broken their contract and owed him 15% of her income and royalties, potentially for the rest of her career. He argued in court that he had made her a star, and the battle played out in tabloids filled with stories of betrayal. Eventually, Dolly agreed to pay him around $1 million over several years, later calling it the price of peace and admitting he got the first million she ever owned. But the scars weren't just financial. Dolly described him as a male chauvinist who tried to control every part of her career, and even after their split, Wagoner gave bitter interviews claiming she was untrustworthy and would betray even her family if it helped her succeed. His words painted him as a man who could not accept Dolly's independence, forever tying his legacy not only to rhinestones and duets, but also to the star who had to fight her way out from under his shadow. The damage from Porter Wagoner's bitter split with Dolly Parton reached far beyond their personal conflict. His own career and finances soon began to crumble. Poor business decisions, failed restaurants, and an extravagant lifestyle drained his fortune, and by the mid-1980s he was bankrupt, forced to auction off his treasured rhinestone suits that had once symbolized his success. It was a painful fall for a man who had once ruled the Grand Ole Opry stage, leaving behind a legacy remembered as much for his feud with Dolly as for his music. George Jones, on the other hand, was a star whose personal chaos often rivaled his songs. By the late 1970s, his reputation for unreliability had earned him the nickname No-Show Jones after missing 54 concerts in a single year. Fans still paid the $13.50 ticket price, about $50 a day, knowing full well he might not appear, and promoters even joke about placing bets on whether he would take the stage. His career teetered on collapse until the 1980 release of He Stopped Loving Her Today saved him from disappearing altogether. But Jonesy's antics went far beyond missed shows. In one infamous episode, his wife Shirley hit every car key in the house to stop him from drinking, only to watch him ride their John Deere mower 8 miles, some say 16, to a liquor store in Beaumont, Texas, crawling at 5 miles per hour for nearly 3 hours. Years later, Jones laughed about it, admitting nothing could keep him from a drink. By 1982, the chaos had turned darker. Fresh off a second consecutive CMA Male Vocalist of the Year award, he was pulled over weaving down I-65 in Nashville, drunk in a Cadillac with a half-empty bottle of Jack Daniels beside him and a fake license plate reading Pour Some 3. When a TV cameraman arrived, Jones tried to kick him before finally admitting to police, "I'm drunk. Take me to jail." In the holding cell, he swung between rage and laughter, the perfect image of the storm that defined him. Even stints in rehab and a hospital stay after a cocaine-fueled crash only added to his legend. Buck Owens, by contrast, presented a smiling, polished image on stage, charming millions as a co-host of Hall in glittering suits. But behind the scenes, colleagues describe a man who ruled with fear. In Eileen Sisk's 2010 biography, former band members recalled humiliation, constant berating, and an atmosphere where they were afraid to speak. Owens controlled every detail, often paying his musicians just $100 a week, while those who quit found themselves blacklisted in Bakersfield and beyond. Roy Clark, his famous Hall partner, admitted working with him was like living in constant fear of the next explosion. His cruelty extended into his personal life as well, with wives and girlfriends describing violent, jealous rages, even as he maintained the public image of a devoted family man. At times, he even involved the FBI to intimidate rivals. Still, his business instincts made him a multimillionaire. By his death in 2006, Owens had built an empire worth an estimated $100 million, with 21 number-one hits, cattle ranches, broadcasting stations, and publishing rights under his control. He even charged his band members for meals and costumes, priding himself on being shrewd with money. Yet in the end, all that wealth couldn't buy him peace. Isolated in later years, his son Buddy Allen Owens admitted his father's fierce independence often left him lonely, a man whose empire was as feared as it was admired. Owens himself didn't try to hide the truth completely. In interview after interview, he confessed, "I was a bastard on wheels." His biographer put it even more bluntly, saying Owen could buy almost everything in life except a satisfied mind. Farron Young's story, meanwhile, wasn't just about the songs that made him famous. It was also about a wild streak that shocked even the toughest people in Nashville. In 1972, during a concert in Clarksburg, West Virginia, a buzzing crowd watched in disbelief as Young pulled an 18-year-old fan onto the stage and spanked her after she spat at him. The act was so outrageous that he was arrested and fined $24, with $11 more in court costs. The news spread quickly, adding to a reputation that was already infamous. Known as a hillbilly heartthrob, Young wasn't just remembered for his music but feared for his unpredictable drunken outbursts. Waitresses, reporters, and even his own bandmates sometimes ended up facing his temper, often fueled by bourbon and barbiturates. His biographer, Diane Diekman, once described a night when he urinated all over a hotel hallway carpet, laughing as he claimed he had christened the motel in honor of the band's tour stop. His anger could turn even darker. In 1984, while drunk and furious, he fired a pistol into the ceiling of his Tennessee home, a moment that marked the breaking point of his 32-year marriage. The most haunting part of his story came in December 1996. Alone, depressed, and weakened by cancer and emphysema, Young felt abandoned by the Nashville industry he had once helped shape. One morning, he picked up a .38 revolver and shot himself. He didn't die right away. A longtime bandmate found him alive in bed, but he passed away the next day at Summit Medical Center at the age of 64. His suicide note was brief and devastating, blaming his failing health and what he saw as a decline of his career. He made it clear that he believed the industry had left him behind. After his death, his ashes were scattered over Old Hickory Lake at the home of Johnny and June Cartercash, leaving behind one final link to the rebellious spirit of classic country music.